Okay. Well, we came together. Shaul wrote a book about how, wait, what's the title? Because
Why bad things don't happen to good people?
yes. And um, we met at the conference about a year ago, May, at the conference in London. And Shaul lost his wife to cancer. You know that because we wrote that in the advertisement. And then we decided to come together and talk about what it's like. How do the principles, we know how the principles work in business, and a lot of people get high and happy from the principles, and they're great. But sometimes people get a little bit knotted up when real life things happen. And so, as most of you probably know, I've been living with cancer for 7.5 years, and Shaul lost his wife in
2001.
2001. And now he's married to someone very lovely and beautiful. So we came together to talk about this and how the tough stuff, when life really throws you those curveballs.
Yeah, absolutely.
Is that right about what you said?
That sounds good to me, Wendy. That sounds good. And I really, it's great to see kind of how much interest there is. Wendy and I kind of thought, well, let's do it and let's put it out there. And maybe a few people come, and we'll kind of see what happens. And it's great that, there's a lot of people on here, and it's I'm very touched that so many people are interested in this particular topic, and in us, I guess. Thank you for your confidence. Looks like there's about kind of getting over 20 people here, which is fantastic. And I did start recording it, Wendy. So even though
good. I had forgotten.
You forgot to remind me, but I reminded myself. So the kind of the topic is, I'm going to kind of get started a little bit here. The principles when your world is dark, and the world does get dark sometimes. The world gets dark for all of us, I think. And we want to kind of talk about our experiences a little bit, and how the principles have helped us through dark times in our lives. And I'm particularly excited to be doing this with you, Wendy, because Wendy's somebody who, as she said, she's been living with stage 4 cancer for a while now. And stage 4 cancer is not a great illness, and yet she's been doing it with such grace. And we all have our ups and downs, and Wendy does as well. But that's human. That's not cancer. You don't have your ups and downs because you have cancer. You have your ups and downs because you're a human being. And we're kind of all in the same boat like that. But Wendy just seems to navigate the whole experience with such grace and such a feeling of love and gratitude. So I'm really excited to be doing this with her, with you. So I'm looking forward to it. We're assuming on this webinar that everybody has some sort of background in the principles. We're assuming we are talking to people who have some understanding. Now, if you don't worry, you don't need to log off now, because I would guess you'll still get something out of it. I would guess you'd still get a sense of what we're talking about. And if you do, I would recommend you go and try and learn more about the principles themselves, because what we're going to be talking about and these ideas have been so helpful to us in so many ways in our lives, not just in navigating the challenges of life. I would recommend finding out more about them. But hopefully you'll get a sense of that from what we're talking about today. Everybody, my experience, everybody has their blind spots, let's say, when it comes to the principles. I know everything's thought and nothing's real, really. And I can do that with depression, and I can do that with anxiety, and I know that's just my thinking. But when it comes to food, that's not my thought. I'm hungry. I need to eat what's in the fridge. I can't stop myself. That's not that. My desire for food is not my thinking. It's something real and genuine. That kind of happens to be one of mine. So I'm giving you an example of my blind spot over there. But we've all got our own, that there's kind of somewhere where we just kind of can't see beyond it. We just can't see kind of how the principles apply over here. And I think difficult circumstances is, in my experience, one that a lot of people come up against. A lot of people kind of struggle with and kind of have a hard time with, because let's say you lose somebody who you love. Well, they're gone. I don't think they're gone. They are. It's not my thinking that they're not here. They're not here. I don't. Person has cancer. I don't think I have cancer. I do. It's a real thing. It looks real. It looks genuine. It looks like it has some traction. It looks like there's something to it. I'm not just making it up in my head. Yeah, anxiety, I'm making up stories for myself about all the things that might happen. Yeah, depression, I'm making up stories for myself about how bad life is and just taking that too seriously. But when it comes to real events in life, surely that's not me making it up. That's not my thinking, making up a story. That's something that's genuine. That's something that's real. And I think that's one of the reasons why people might struggle, or more people might struggle with that than they might struggle with some of the other areas. I think it's a very common blind spot. And so we thought that would be a great thing to address. Our plan is to kind of talk for maybe sort of 45 minutes or so, and then we'll see if anybody has any questions or anything to add to that. Hopefully we'll be able to unmute people. Between me and Wendi together, I think we're both about as used to this technology as the other. I was thinking today, I remember when my parents were useless with modern technology. I remember those days. Oh, my parents, they haven't got a clue with all this modern technology. And it's funny how it comes back on you. Now it's me. Now my kids are way ahead of me. I guess life goes in circles, So what Wendi and I thought is that I would kind of start a little bit with my sense of things, and then she's gonna kind of follow up with hers, and then we'll see kind of if anyone has feedback and questions and things. And really, I think this we're doing this as a one-off, but part of the reason we're doing this as a one-off is just to gauge people's interest, because there's going to be a lot more to be said than we're going to say in this, sort of however long it'll be, an hour and a quarter, let's say, webinar. And I think there's at least 3 areas when talking about this topic. There's the question of me as a person, of me as an individual, when difficult, painful, hard, challenging circumstances happen in my life. How do I kind of have perspective on that? How do I see that in a way that I don't get all tied up in knots about it, that I don't get lost and upset and frustrated and caught up? And then there's kind of a question beyond that of, well, that's great, and maybe I've kind of got a sense of that within myself, but what about other people? What about when somebody who I love is going through a difficult time? What do I do there? Do I just tell them it's all you're thinking, and so don't worry about it? It's not a big deal, Or, yeah, I don't think that's going to work. If you want a broken nose, maybe. If it's your strategy for getting a broken nose, it's probably a good one. But other than that, that's kind of a second thing. So what do you do, and what is helpful, and how do you kind of reach out to people who are going through difficult and challenging circumstances? And I do that a lot, because in my role as a rabbi, I get a lot of people coming to me going through really, really difficult, hard times. So I get a lot of practice in that one. And then there's a third thing, which is sort of maybe as a practitioner as well. I don't know how many of you are 3 Principles practitioners out there, but there's sort of a question of, well, how do you talk about this as a practitioner? That's another area we could kind of talk about. Wendi and I were just talking about this yesterday. And I think that we decided, just to start with, being that we've just got a short period of time, we're just going to start with the first thing, which is, and really the other 2 kind of come from that anyway, which is, how do I kind of see it myself? How do I see beyond? How do I learn to see beyond what seem like very real circumstances, and ride through them with more grace than I might otherwise do so. And so the first thing I want to say is just something that I said earlier, is that getting through hard times with grace doesn't mean you're going to be doing well all the time. It really doesn't. We're human, and we have our ups and downs, and we're going to struggle. We're really going to struggle. There are going to be times when you struggle. That's true. That's just the nature of human experience in this world. And what we're going to be talking about is not how to never struggle. That would be totally unrealistic for us to even consider thinking about. That'd be like saying, how do you not breathe for an hour? You know, I wouldn't be able to give you a suggestion for that, because I don't know how human beings can not breathe for an hour. Well, I also don't know how human beings can not go through difficult times in life, difficult times in themselves. I don't mean the circumstance. I mean where they struggle, where they have a hard time, where they feel life is just overwhelming them and too much and too hard and too difficult. So we're all going to go through those times, and that's just the reality of the human experience. What we're going to be talking about is just how to do a little better, how to be able to feel more comfortable with that, how to feel more okay about that, how to feel more comfortable with the human experience. That's kind of the direction we're pointing in. So just in terms of sort of my credentials for talking about this, as Wendi said, my late wife, a very beautiful and special woman, was diagnosed with breast cancer in 1998. And it was stage 4 on diagnosis. It was in her lungs already. And she passed away in 2001. So she lived for just about 3 years, less than 3 years from when she was diagnosed. And I was left with 4 little children, aged 3, 5, 7, and 9. And this was before I'd come across the principles. This was before I'd been introduced to the principles. But here's the great thing, and it's kind of the first thing that I want to say, is that there's no such, I might not have come across the principles, but that doesn't mean that the principles weren't at play. And it also doesn't mean that I didn't have access to the principles. I did. We human beings have access to wisdom whether we know it or not. Or let's put it differently, wisdom has access to us. So we don't even need to necessarily go looking for it. Wisdom just kind of sometimes grabs us kicking and screaming and tells us what makes sense whether we like it or not. We kind of think, oh, I'm so wise and I'm so clever and I can figure things out. Sometimes we kind of maybe feel that way, but it's not true. There is greater mind out there. And we human beings have the privilege beyond other animals to be able to be conscious of the wisdom of that mind. Animals are part of mind. Animals are a product of the 3 principles. But in my sense, what makes us human beings different to animals is that we have a consciousness of mind. We are conscious of mind. Animals are products of mind. We have the ability to be conscious of wisdom and to see its effect on us and to see its impact on us and to open ourselves to it to a lesser or greater degree. We have choices to make. And that is the beautiful thing about being human for me. That's the thing I love the most, is that I get to have choices. And so when my wife was diagnosed, beyond that, let me talk a step further, because most of my insight came after she passed away. Because when she passed away, I had a realization. And that realization was as follows. And again, this is a realization that would come from the principles, even though I kind of didn't have access to it. And that was that I had a choice. I did not have a choice as to whether my wife was going to be alive or not. That choice wasn't given to me. That wasn't mine to choose. She was gone and never coming back. And that was a reality. And I was a widower, and my children were orphaned from their mother, and nothing I can do about that. That was crystal clear to me. But what I realized was, and it just came to me as an insight, that here's where I do have choice. I have choice as to whether to allow that to be burdensome, to weigh down on me, to upset me 24/7, to define who I am. I am somebody who's lost his wife. My children are somebody who don't have a mother. That's the nature of their experience. That defines who they are in their life and in this world. I can kind of experience that way, or I have a choice to have a lighter feeling about it. I have a choice to see beyond that and see that life is way more than my wife not being here. And life for my children is way more than them not having a mother. Life is so big and so vast and so great for every single one of us. And the human spirit and the human soul is so broad and has so much to offer. And the world has so much variety and so much greatness and so much goodness. I realized that I could kind of orient myself towards not being burdened by it, or I could orient myself towards being burdened by it. And I made a choice. I made a choice right there and then, is that I don't want this to be a burden. Now, that doesn't mean to say there weren't times when it was a burden. There's no question about it. There were times when it was a serious burden and it was overwhelming. And it was, I remember we, in Jewish tradition, we spend, when a person passes away, we spend 7 days we don't leave our house, and people come to visit us and to support us. And it's really a wonderful, wonderful tradition. But I remember during those 7 days, I would go into my back garden, and I would feel, I never had an experience before or since, but I felt like I was suffocating, physically suffocating. I could not breathe. Literally, physically, I was gasping for breath. Amazing the way thought, because that's all it really is, affects us physically and in so many different ways. And that was an incredible example of it for me. So I'm not saying that there weren't times when it weighed incredibly heavy on me. But what I saw was I wanted to make a choice towards orienting, towards being interested, towards looking towards the unburdened feeling rather than the burdened feeling. And because I'd made that choice, I kind of got interested in that direction, and it felt lighter, and it felt more bearable, and it felt more, I had more space in my head to have wisdom and to sort of know what to do and to know how to respond to circumstances and to know how to deal with things. There's a little story that I like to tell about my son, Elkanah, who was 5 years old at the time. He's 21 now, sweet boy. But he was a little boy with his curly blonde hair. He's now 6'2", towers way above me. But I, during that week, I thought I'd better check in with him and see how he's doing. So, because he wasn't talking at all. So I said to him, Elkanah, how are you doing? And so he looks at me for a minute. He says, I'm doing fine, thank you. So I'm like, oh, no, this is no good. Can't be doing fine. He's just lost his mother, This is a classic denial. So from 5-year-olds, here's me thinking of 5-year-olds in denial. But anyway, as I've learned the principles, I got more of a sense of this. But I said to him, well, is there anything that's bothering you? No, nothing's bothering me. You sure? Yeah, everything's fine. So I think, okay, let's be a bit more direct. Do you miss your mommy? No, not really. Don't really miss her. I was like, okay, let's try a different tack. So I said, I really miss her. And I feel so sad that she's not here. So he thinks for a minute and he says, well, Dad, we've got lots of videos of her. Why don't you just watch some videos maybe you'll do better. And I was like, oh, okay, I got the point. You're doing fine. Let me just leave you alone and let you get on with it. But it took me a while to get there, but kind of my wisdom came through in the end, and I saw that he's a little boy that's kind of doing okay, and he's getting on with his life, and that's fine. Let let him get on with his life. Let me not get in his way and try and convince him of something that he doesn't think or doesn't feel or doesn't see. Because we can do that with kids. We can kind of, we have the power of suggestion with children to put thoughts in their heads that they don't have yet. But once we start suggesting it, they kind of take onto that, and they grasp onto that. So that choice that I kind of made of looking for lightness, like I say, didn't immunize me from the tremendous pain, the tremendous hardship that I was going through. But it just gave me more space. It gave me more space to be able to have some perspective on it and have some sense of direction for myself, as opposed to just feeling totally crushed by the experience. And I meet so many people who can get so crushed by something like this, who can just get so overwhelmed and so lost in the experience and so defined by it that they just can't see anything else. They just can't see beyond the experience that's right in front of them there. And that's such a shame, because when I opened myself up, I started to see, hey, look at this. I've got 4 beautiful children. What a gift. Let me enjoy them. Let me spend time with them. Let me give to them. And I look at my family, look how supportive my family is. It just, when you get a little lighter about things, and that in my mind is something that the Principles is so helpful with. It doesn't take away the fact that there's pain, but it puts it in its place such that you can get on with life while it's there, while it's still there. I'm going to say one more thing maybe, and then I'll let Wendi kind of take over. Just occurs to me, one more little story maybe, because it's kind of a funny story, and I like to tell this story. This is my favorite story, I think, ever in my life, that ever happened to me in my entire life. And I've had some fun in my life, so this was the funniest one ever. So, and I apologize if you've heard me tell this story before, but about 3 weeks after my wife passed away, we went to Switzerland, and we there was my 4 kids, and there was my sister-in-law, my wife's sister, who came with us. I wanted the family to get away. I felt we needed a break. It's been a crazy period of time, and there was Hannah, my present wife. She was our nanny at the time. Sound of Music style, and then there was who else was there? And then there was a good friend of mine from America who came to join us in Switzerland, called Yitz, who just came to support me at this kind of difficult time in my life. He came to spend the week with us, and so he's introduced himself to the kids as Uncle Yitz. This is Uncle Yitz, so I'm going to call him Uncle Yitz for because of that. And we met him in Zurich airport, and we went to hire a car, an 8-seater car, and both gave in our licenses, me and Uncle Yitz. And Uncle Yitz, and I said, well, who's going to drive first? And Uncle Yitz said, oh, you drive first, Shaul, which in Uncle Yitz language means I don't want to drive at all. That was just kind of his way of saying it. And so I said, great, I'm happy to drive. It'll take my mind off things, So, and I don't know if you've ever been to St. Moritz, if you've ever been there, but the drive to St. Moritz is you're going into the Alps. So it's, a hairpin turn after hairpin turn after hairpin turn. And so we're driving up this windy road, and it's at the end of every turn, there's a cliff, big cliff, and the cliff gets bigger and bigger as you go higher and higher. Now there's bollards there, and there's barriers there, and there's walls there, so you can't really go over the cliff. But there were if you look down the cliff, you do see the odd car or two dotted down there. You kind of wonder, how did they get down there? That's interesting. But as we're driving along, there's myself driving, Uncle Yitz in the passenger seat, and in the middle is my daughter Shifra, and she was 7 years old at the time, driving along, and it gets really quiet. Just everybody's really quiet. It's beautiful scenery, and it's just amazing. So Shifra says to me, Abba, means Daddy, what would happen if the car went over the cliff? So I said to her immediately, and this is kind of my little thing that I do. This is just my way of kind of, child education. I like it. It works for me. I don't know if it works for anybody else. But I said to her, okay, Shifra, we went over the cliff, yeah? There's 8 of us in the car. 2 people would be killed immediately before we got to the bottom. 2 people would have, serious injuries and would die on their way to hospital. 2 people would have serious injuries and would survive, and 2 people would have moderate to light injuries and would be okay. So now that shut her up. That really shut her up. And I say that, in reflecting back, we could have had a whole story back and forth. I would say, oh, Shifra, the car can't go off the cliff. Don't worry about it. And she would have said, but Abba, what about those cars down there? It looks like they went off the cliff. Oh, well, they got unlucky. Well, can't we get unlucky? I think it's just easier to just cut to the chase and say what it is. So anyway, the car goes quiet again. And Shifra says to me after about 2 minutes, she says to me, Abba, if we go off the cliff, I want to be one of the people that dies. And I said, why is that, Shifra? And she said, because I want to be with Mummy again. If I die, I can be with Mummy. And I said to her, Shifra, this is completely true. I said to Shifra, I was thinking exactly the same thing. And I was thinking that, because we were talking about death and people dying, and I thought, if I want to die. If we go off the cliff, I want to be one of the people that dies because I'll be with my wife again. And so Uncle Yitz turns to me and he says, Shaul, I think it's my turn to drive the car. It was so funny. I almost went off the cliff, from laughing. But it was great because it just cut through all the weight and all the heaviness and all, my thinking about it. Oh, my wife's dead and it's so terrible and I'm so lost without her. And I was kind of getting lost in this self-pity of my own thinking, such that I didn't even want to be alive anymore. I mean, that's pretty serious self-pity. In that moment, if you could have said, here's a pill and you can die, I probably would have taken it. I mean, that's where thinking can take you in the moment. And when he said that, it just cut through it all. And I was like, oh, Shaul, stop taking yourself so seriously. Come on. I mean, that's basically what he said in that joke. And it was so, and Shifra as well, she just found it so funny, and we all just had a really good laugh and said, okay, great. Let's get on with life now. It's the beautiful Alps here. Let's enjoy ourselves. Let's have a good time. We're together, and it's beautiful to sit here together. And it was a real insight to me. And whenever I reflect back on that story, I see the insight there that yes, there are things that are painful experiences in life. Yes, there are things that are difficult, hard. We might not want the world to be that way. We might wish things were different. But what we make of it is still what we make of it. We still make of our lives. We still get to use thought to make of our experience whatever we want to make of that experience. So I can sit in the car and think about it and the weight and the thinking and the mulling it over and the quietness, and I can just get so overwhelmed by it that I don't want to be here anymore. Equally, I can have perspective on it and be laughing the next moment and say, oh, that was a good joke. Now let's enjoy the Alps again. Now let's enjoy spending time together in the car. And nothing changed. My wife still wasn't alive. It wasn't that she kind of came back and she was sitting in the back of the car now. She still wasn't there. My children still didn't have their mother. I still didn't have a wife. But I just saw something different. And so coming back to the principles again, it's a question of what we're seeing and how we are, what we're taking on board, and what we are doing with the thinking that comes our way, not the details of the experience itself. And you know, that's kind of my little thoughts. And you know, what do you got to say on all that, Wendy? What's your thinking about it?
Well, first, to start off with what you were saying, before you told the funny story about your son when he was 5,
Yeah.
like, it just occurred to me in listening to you that all there really is love.
Mm.
And in the moment when I heard that, I just felt so touched, because that's all there is. So whether we're, even with your story with Shifra, and the moment where you connected and you talked about the dying and the sad part of that, without thinking that you shouldn't be feeling sad or whatever you think about sadness, when it's just the pure emotion, it's still love.
Mm.
And it reminds me of a story with my 22-year-old son who I've told this story, so some of you might have heard it before, but up until about 2 summers ago, first of all, he doesn't want to hear about the principles these days at all. But up until 2 summers ago, whenever I talked about having cancer, he would always say, deflect it with, "Oh, Mom, you're fine. You're going to be fine. Don't say that." And so I really didn't talk to him about cancer. I didn't talk to everybody about if I was getting a PET scan or whatever. And then my son went to volunteer at a camp for kids whose parents had cancer. And it was not the principles, but he got this different feeling about cancer. And he changed. He was able to see, you know, that it was also part of life. You don't have to push it away.
Mm.
And my son, who's a lot smarter than me, he graduated with a bio degree just recently at UCLA. And I could always use his help when I go to doctor's appointments, because I feel like he gets it, you know, so I could figure things out. And he came with me after that. About a year ago, he came with me to a doctor's appointment. And we got bad news that there was more progression. And we kind of both were together and, you know, had our separate feelings while we were with the doctor. And we went in the car and we sat there and we cried together. We just cried. And I'll never forget that moment, because I felt so at one with him.
Mm.
And it was such a different experience than the generations in my family of making believe that we don't feel a certain way. See, what happened to me, I think, is, I don't know what happened to my son, but also simultaneously what happened to me is that if I'm resilient, I don't have to be afraid of my feelings. And prior to that, there'd be myself and my kid making believe I'm fine and making believe he's fine. And you feel kind of distant from each other. So while you totally innocently are just trying to protect and love your kid, you don't feel close. But in that moment when we cried together, it was such a beautiful closeness. Like that was love too. And I just recently read a book that I had been afraid to read because I thought that it was about a woman that has cancer as well. And I never read her book, even though I respected her, because I thought she'd go all into the trauma about the cancer. And I was writing to LaConner and I was reading the book, and it made me think about the other part that I am sad that I have cancer. I do have these feelings. So I drove the 2 hours from Seattle airport to LeConner, and I just cried the most beautiful, wonderful cry without a lot of thinking that I should or shouldn't be feeling the certain way. I just cried, and it felt right. I felt 100% present with myself to just be wherever I was at. And I don't know why I'm talking about this, but I just felt the love through the whole story that you were telling. Like there's nothing more powerful than love. So anything of your thinking that gets in the way that you should or shouldn't be feeling something. Yes, thought in my world and in a lot of the people here that have looked at the 3 principles, absolutely across the board, 100%, you feel your thought. But when I learned that, what I tended to do, and even now my knee-jerk reaction is, if I'm feeling bad, my knee-jerk reaction is to go back into, oh my gosh, go back to thinking about how, well, if thought creates feeling, then we got to change it. But when you leave thought out of it and you just don't have to change and you're just present with whatever's coming, we're resilient, so it comes and it goes. So that's what that brought to me. Like, it's all a part of it, all of the feelings, and when you start taking, I think what happened to me with the principles is layers of meaning, like an onion, come off. Like layers of, so first it started with, like, before the principles, it meant something that I had cancer, about Wendi. And that I can't heal myself, or can I heal myself, or what, or it meant something that I'm depressed today. One day I came back from London and I went to get a rent-a-car on my way back from London, and I got this depressed feeling after I spoke at the conference. And I'm like, oh my gosh, Wendi, you're a fraud. You're feeling depressed. This can't be. You shouldn't be feeling this way. What's wrong with you? Knee-jerk reaction to go back to thought, feeling, go back to thought to try to fix feeling. And then I said, then it took me a few minutes and I said, oh, silly, you don't have to do anything with this. And I started driving home to San Diego. And all of a sudden, like magic, I didn't feel bad at all. Now, that depression would have kept me in depression for months and months. And so, unlike you, Shaul, when I first was diagnosed in 2010 with cancer, I was a mess. Like, I couldn't find any wisdom. I didn't know about the principles, but I had done tons and tons of self-help things to try to change myself. But I remember I was at our big giant department store called Costco, which I don't think you guys have. And
we do.
You do?
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know that.
My wife makes a pilgrimage there once a week.
Oh, wow. I didn't even know you guys had Costco. So I was at the gas pump, and my beautiful, well-meaning doctor, who I was friendly with, called me and said, I'm really sorry, and you have cancer. And dread just came over me. It was before I knew about the principles. I was still active in trying to fix myself, which really, you guys, is just a whole lot of thinking about something that isn't broken. And it makes you feel pretty bad trying to fix yourself. So I'm at the gas pump, and I just had dread. And I had unbearable suffering. I don't know why I'm smiling about this, but for 2 years, I couldn't stop thinking about it. I couldn't be with myself. I couldn't sit with myself. Couldn't face my kids because I thought I was supposed to be happy for them. And so it was just unbearable suffering because I didn't see the principles in cancer. I just saw it as, I don't know what I saw it as, to be honest with you. I just suffered. So when I came into the principles, it started calming down a bit, you know, and layers of thought started coming off to where I have a PET scan tomorrow. And I'm like, when you were talking, Shaul, I thought, all there is love. Like, I don't have to go and think about the PET scan tomorrow. I'm just, all there is right now is me, you, and these 32 people, or whatever, all of us 32 people. That's all there is right now. I don't have to go over to tomorrow to figure out tomorrow anymore. And I feel like it saved my life. I don't know how, like, I knew these people, like I'd see people with cancer that were all positive and they're living their life and they think cancer's a blessing. And I would think, well, I have no clue. That's not my way of being. I'd like them to rub off on me, please, because I am suffering so much. But I'm kind of a negative, cynical person. Even though I spent 40 years trying not to be negative and cynical, I'm kind of negative and cynical, so I'll never be that person. And the principal has explained everything to me about how we just get caught up in that. And so my life is, yeah, I get scared sometimes, but it's not chronic fear, it's fear. And when I have the thoughts around fear, I'm suspicious, a little tiny bit suspicious. Now listen, I get tricked every time. Like, I have a lot of three principles teachers and friends that they just seem to like kind of float along. No, me, I get tricked and I believe it. Like when I was at that, when I was coming back from London and I was depressed for like 5 minutes, I just thought, that's my life. She's going to be depressed for the rest of her life. What is wrong with her? And so I believe it 100%. And then I remember, oh, silly, you're just innocently thinking about it. And then it every time it feels like a miracle. So the other day I went to see a taping of Michael Neal and Anita Moore-Journey, who had a near-death experience with cancer. And then the cancer disappeared after her near-death experience. So we went there to Los Angeles. It's about 2 hours from me. And I was in the audience listening to the whole thing. And she was saying, she spoke about her near-death experience and how the cancer disappeared. And now, like, she made that into, you have to be more passionate about life and you have to love yourself more. And so I get this idea, I get a little tricked for a minute, like, oh, okay, then I'll get that experience too, and my cancer would disappear. So I'm driving with my husband home in the car, it's a 2-hour drive. And I said, okay, honey, so maybe, like, if I'm just a little more passionate, and I'm full on believing that I have to do something and fix Wendi so the cancer could go away. And it's making a lot of sense to me. And my husband just looks over to me and says, well, she also spoke about in her experience how life and death is not really true, and how she had the experience of death and beauty, and she had all these insights. And just because she had those insights doesn't mean there's something for you to fix about you. See, I got 100% tricked for a few minutes, thinking I had to now go and do passion. I'm not passionate enough. Which I'm not saying, if I got an insight from within about passion, from within Wendi Saggese, that's a beautiful insight for me to have. But there's nothing to fix. There's no, it's not personal that I have cancer. So another thing that happened to me is I was with a friend of mine who might even be on this call, and her husband was dying from cancer. And prior to that, I had been afraid, being that I have cancer, of being with people with cancer, because I didn't want to start thinking about what's going to happen next for me. But I kept looking in this direction of the inside out nature of life, the impersonal nature of life. And I walked through the ICU, which is the intensive care unit here. And I looked at people in different stages of death. And I just had this aha moment where, oh, I get it. It's not personal. It doesn't mean anything about them. Life is, we live and we die, and there's no get out of jail card for free. You know, you don't, so for a second, when I went to Anita Moriarty, I started thinking, oh, okay, well, if Wendi just becomes more passionate and more living in the moment, and I just fix myself just enough, then maybe I get that I'm not going to die. But then I saw that that was a painful direction to go in. And I woke back up to just being present here now, right here and right now, to what's in front of me. And so that's how it just keeps, so this understanding about the principles just unfolds so beautifully, like where even your confusion, even your upset, even my moments where I'm totally tricked, that moment ended up translating into a moment for a client where she just said, oh, it's not about people telling me what to do. It's about me from within. I have wisdom inside of me. Like, so every moment becomes a gift, even if it feels horrible in the moment. Like those moments where I have the misunderstanding that my thinking is true. When I wake up out of them, I've learned so much. So I see where, like you do, where the principles were always at play. But I was so busy trying to do things and change situations and make sure my kids were never unhappy. Like I really had this idea. Because I spent so much time being depressed that I just never wanted my kids to be depressed. So I feared that. And what a switch to go from fearing your feelings to just knowing that it's all transient. Life is transient. Like, why should I take death and life personal when I look outside my window and there's a tree that's going to live and at some point it's going to die? So I keep seeing more and more and more. And what's interesting about it is it just could be a teeny tiny bit that you see, you know, just like, for instance, if you're just a teeny bit suspicious that you're believing something and you're having a misunderstanding, that grows. So I think that's it. That's all I have so far.
I just wanted to say a couple of things on that, Wendi, because you just brought a couple of kind of things to mind. The first one is you were saying about, you know, what I'm hearing you saying is that it's about expectation or kind of targets that we set for ourselves. So you were saying with, let's say, with dying, that you know, we kind of have an expectation. Well, I should live for a certain amount of time, you know, and if I'm not going to live for that amount of time, then that's a problem. And so now when you get an illness that looks like life might be shorter, well, then that is a problem. Not because it's a problem, but because you've created this target, this expectation, this kind of self-created sense of how things need to be. And now the world's not matching up to that. And what I hear you saying is, when we do better is when we don't set those things, when we just kind of take the world as it comes, and we just enjoy it for what it is. And we just appreciate the moments, and we just appreciate what we have and the time that we have, and don't consider too much, well, should it be this way? Should it be that way? You know, should I be sick? Should I not be sick? It is what it is, and just enjoy it. You know, I was thinking as I was...
In addition to what you're saying, though, the appreciation, when you're thinking you should be here longer, or when I'm thinking I want to fight for my life and find the right therapy to keep me alive, when I'm getting caught up in that, that's okay. And if I'm a little suspicious of that, and I allow it to calm down, the appreciation that you're talking about comes from insight. That's what we are.
It just comes. That's right. That's right. In the absence of kind of attachment to thinking, we human beings are fine. That's just who we are. That's just what we are. But then we get kind of lost in the details, and then the thinking about all the details, and then we just kind of get lost from home base, from our essence, and then you miss it. Then you miss it. So it's autumn over here. Americans would say fall. It's fall over here, and the color of the trees is just absolutely stunning. Absolutely stunning. And I'm just overwhelmed by it. It's just so beautiful. It's just, the world is so gorgeous at the moment. And yet, there's times when I'll see that, and there's times when I don't. There's times when I'm kind of got a lot on my mind, and I'm thinking, and I can drive down the most beautiful road, and I don't even notice that it's there. And then there's times when I'm walking somewhere, I'm driving somewhere, I'm like, where did that tree come from? That wasn't there yesterday, was it? And it was, but I wasn't there yesterday. I wasn't there seeing. I wasn't in the world yesterday. I was in my own little head and my own little world and my own creation. It's always there. It's just whether we're seeing it or not. And the other thing I wanted to say, which I loved what you said, Wendi, is and just an example of it is that it's just love. And love has many expressions. Love has many ways to experience it. But when I was spending these 7 days mourning for my father, and what would happen was I'd be sitting there, and I'd be kind of sitting in my room, and different people would come to visit me, and someone would walk in the door to visit me, and they'd walk in the door, and I'd suddenly burst out crying, and I would just start sobbing. And they'd feel kind of uncomfortable, like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that. And then we'd get talking, and I'd kind of calm down a little bit. And then someone else would walk in, and I'd just start sobbing again. And it was a really beautiful experience. And I came to realize that sobbing, that pain was just my love for my father expressing itself in that way. It was just a beautiful feeling of love that was how it kind of came out. That was kind of how it expressed itself. But it was I saw the love in there. I felt the love in there. And I was like, great, bring it on, let's have more of this sobbing. I'm ready to do it. And it happens to me every now and then with my late wife, Ilana, who's been gone for 15 years. And I'll just be walking down the street one day. And it happens to me every few months. I'm walking down the street and I find myself crying. I'm like, what is that? I'm crying, and I'm just so upset. And I realize I'm feeling my love for her. I was sent a feeling of love. I don't know what it was. I saw something that reminded me of her, or I had an experience that resonated with her. And I so value those moments, because they are moments of the expression of that beautiful love that we shared together. And you might, if you look at it, for what it is, and like you were saying, well, it's not good to be crying, and we don't want to feel pain, and it's a shame, because you miss what's in there. You miss the essence of love that is inherent within that experience. And shame to miss that. Shame to kind of want to put that aside. The beautiful experiences of life come in many shapes and sizes, and many varieties. And it's the feeling of love that's in it that is relevant, not the details of the experience. Now, we kind of have a definition of what love needs to look like. Now, this is what love looks like. Love looks like I'm sitting there and I got a big smile on my face, and I'm just, you know, in the moment, and it doesn't necessarily always come that way. There's so many shapes and sizes that love can express itself within the human experience, and just look for that love. Don't look for the details. Look for what's behind it. Look for what's underlying it. You know, Sid always used to say, "Look for the feeling." It's the feeling. That's what you're looking for. And if I was to reflect in those moments when I was sobbing for my father, or when I'm walking down the street crying for my wife, the feeling is beautiful.
No. Isn't that amazing? Like, that's what's so amazing. Like, all those years, I'm 57. For how many years did I try to not feel bad?
That's right, exactly. Oh, this is no good. I got to get rid of that. That shouldn't be here. There's something
and then
wrong,
here,
you know?
Listen to this. How embarrassing is this? The first 2 years in the principles, I thought that's what the principles were about, so I could always feel good. Now, I'm not saying it's like when you feel bad. I'm not condoning that. But there's this level, I think, that we're talking about that is not like, there's not a lot of thought. There's not a label that it means anything. So it's just feeling it. It's the human body expressing, cry, laugh, whatever it's expressing.
Yeah.
And what happened to me is when I stopped being so afraid of that, I sat there with a 22-year-old man and cried, and I felt closer to him than I had ever talking about cancer, because I had to try to hide, and make believe I was feeling good.
Yeah, amazing.
Here's a funny thing, and there's a lot of questions, but I don't know how we.
Yeah, we should stop in the.
Do our best. Yeah. But when years ago, I don't know if it'll be funny to people, but years ago. My sister was killed in Kauai. My sister was murdered, actually. And that was what year? In 2000, I think. Anyway, I had to go tell my Yiddish grandmother that my sister was killed in Florida. So I lived at the time, I don't know where I lived, but I flew to Florida to tell my grandmother. Well, my uncle, which was my grandmother's son, came over and he showed me a newspaper clipping of a car pileup and wanted me to lie to my grandmother that she died in an accident. And it was just so strange to me. Like, I felt robbed of the experience of just being honest, so I didn't. And that when the hospice people showed up, they told me that I don't have to do that. That would be ridiculous. And I don't know why I'm saying this part, but what happened to my grandmother, like the human body, let's just say it's this body. And what she did when we told her that news was she just walked back and forth and just kept saying things over and over. Like, I don't remember what, but she was crying and talking, and I saw how my uncle really wanted to stop her from doing that. And it was just an expression of the human being. And it was, if you look back and you don't have a label on what it shouldn't be, it was just beautiful. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, it's not that we don't have suffering. Like, I don't want to make light of anyone's suffering. But from the principles and understanding how the mind works, I don't have to push anything away anymore, because I start to see that we're resilient. And the hardest part, I think, has been for me in these years is the add-on suffering, which makes it like chronic. The add-on suffering. So it would be like crying and then thinking you shouldn't cry and thinking that means something, thinking it means that, okay, if I'm feeling upset now, I'm going to and just the spinning into more and more thought about the feeling. I don't know if that makes sense to anybody. So there's so many questions. What should we do?
Yeah, let's. I don't know. This is where our technical lack of prowess is going to be challenging. But let's. Do you want to take the ones that people have written, or do
Sure.
people want to ask questions? I don't know how to unmute people other than unmuting everybody, and that might end up with a big free for all. So
I
let's.
think people can unmute
Oh, people
themselves.
unmute themselves. Great. So do you want to well, let's just see the bottom one. There's a question down there saying, yes, there's always suffering, but there's so much unnecessary suffering. And I mean, I don't know what you think about that, Wendy, but I feel like I don't know what's unnecessary and what's not unnecessary. That to me is already, you're drawing a target and you're saying, well, this is the life should be this way. And if it's not that way, then that's not necessary. And I don't have a sense of how to judge that. There've been so many times in my life where things have looked superfluous. Things have come along and, well, that's not necessary. And why would that need to be? And why would that need to happen to me? And as time goes on, I've started to see something different. And I've started to be open to possibilities. I think if we make a statement that's unnecessary, it will be a self-fulfilling prophecy. But if you open your heart to the possibilities of what experiences in life might have to offer you, I always see that the things that look unnecessary aren't unnecessary. I think they used to have, I don't know how many it was, but in the 1800s, they had 50 organs that they felt weren't necessary for human beings. They didn't need them. The appendix, and that's why they called it the appendix, and the tonsils, and there were way more than that. And as science got better and better, and medical science got better and better, they one by one they kind of knocked them off the list. Oh no, that is necessary. We shouldn't be cutting out people's gallbladders because they do actually need it somewhere along the way. Maybe we won't cut that out anymore. And as their understanding grew, as human understanding grew, people started to see that what was once thought superfluous was actually a very integral part of the human body. And I don't know where we're up to now. I think the medicine does understand the value of the appendix and the value of the tonsils. They're not in a hurry to cut people's tonsils out anymore. And so I think that the same thing with the experiences of life. For me to stop and say, well, that's not necessary, or that's not needed, or certainly for me to say that in someone else's life, I think I don't know how I could say that, but I don't even know how I could say it in my life. To me, it's like, let's see where it goes. Let's see what it leads. Let's see what it takes me to. And I always find that when I have that open-heartedness about life's experience, it invariably leads me somewhere beautiful and somewhere helpful and somewhere useful for me.
Yeah, I find that too. I'm going to just say really quick that it invariably, these things that I start to ruminate about, that my thinking starts adding on suffering, when I wake up out of that, it's amazing what I see and how helpful that could be to other people. But in addition to that, I'm seeing that a few people have suggested that we answer Marie Francois.
Yeah, I saw that as well. I got her question in front of me.
So Marie, can you unmute yourself and just ask us so that I don't sit here reading it? Like, I don't want to bore people. Is it possible to, do you want to ask that? Or should we just, do you want to?
Yeah. And
goody. Hi, Marie.
Hi. I just kind of jumped off because I don't know. I didn't think I was able to say it properly, actually. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we're hearing you.
Yeah, well, I just kind of like gave the 3P thing a rest because, I don't know, it's just been a terrible, since August, it's just been one thing after another, and I just kind of I started to feel kind of hopeless. And, I mean, I guess I'm still doing things. It looks like it on the surface, but now I just feel hopeless, and I'm not really sleeping. So I wake up and I feel like it's like the continuation of the previous day. Like there's no break. it all just feels one continual awfulness day after day, and night. So I'm exhausted, and my body is, I'm normally pretty healthy, but now I'm getting like these spasms in my leg, and I broke my tooth, and my body just really hurts. So I'm not exercising because I just can't get up and go work out. I just can't do it. And I guess I'm supposed to be like, okay.
You're not supposed to be like,
fine.
okay. You're not supposed to be like, okay, this is all fine. It's not all fine. But
it's been going on for months now and getting progressively worse.
So tell me a question, or tell us a question rather.
Ask a question?
Yeah, so you've been having,
I don't know. I mean, I can go through like what the incidences were, but I just basically, I don't feel up to it anymore. I just don't feel up to it. I don't feel up to life at all anymore. And I haven't felt this bad in a long time. And so I just feel like, I always come back to this. It doesn't matter what happens. I always come back to this at some point. It just never, ever goes away. So this feels like this must be the natural state, because it always comes back to this. Yes, I might feel happy here and there, but it always comes back to this. Always.
Now,
always.
Marie, let me ask you something, Marie. Can I, it's funny that you say that that you go back to, that's kind of your natural state, and you get back into a feeling. Hold on just 1 second. Sorry.
Hi, Marie.
Hi, I'm right here.
Yeah, sorry, bad timing. Somebody just came in. But it's interesting to me that you say, I think everybody has times in life where they feel life is hopeless. I certainly have those times. And certainly when I lost my wife, I had months and months where I just felt like I just didn't see any future for myself. I saw no hope. I saw no life in front of me. I saw no possibility of happiness ever again. And that was that. I had months of that experience, many, many months. And I look back on that, and I can't imagine. There's moments when I feel that way. I've never had it for as long as that period. I've never had it for as long as those months. But that still comes back to me. I'll still have moments. I'll still have a day here, 2 days there, 3 days there, where I feel absolutely helpless, where I feel life has nothing to offer me. And it's only this understanding the principles inside of me that I know that there is a soul inside of me. I know that there's a spirit there. I know there's something deeper. And I know that I can get lost. And I know that we human beings do all get lost. And it's such suffering when we do. It's so horrific when we do. And my heart goes out to you, because I know what that's like. It's just the most horrible experience that you could possibly imagine, to feel that way. But the thing that keeps me going in those moments is that knowledge that that I've been hit there before. You see, it's funny, you switch it the other way around. You kind of say, well, I've been in a bad place before, so when I'm in a good place, I kind of know I'm going to go back to that bad place. I see it, well, I've been in a good place before, so when I'm in a bad place, I know I'm going to go back to that good place. And it sounds to me like you do have times when life looks different, when life looks better, when you see the possibilities of life, when you see the potential.
But it never lasts as long as the bad. I've never had a month. I've never even had I might have a day, maybe, and that's a long time of feeling okay and feeling good. But then I'll have months, stretches of feeling terrible. There's just no way that the happy part is the default. No way. No way.
Well, let's even say, even if it's not, like, this is the thing, this is the trick, is like, when you're feeling bad, which you're feeling bad right now, there's no way you're going to see from that place. You're not going to really see it. All you need to do today, let's just say you're allowed to feel bad the whole entire day and the whole next day and the whole next day. Just be a teeny bit suspicious that it's a trick. Just like when I came back from Anita Moriarty, when I came back that day, I thought for sure that I needed to fix myself and do something different so I could get rid of my cancer. And it didn't look, you couldn't have told me anything in that moment to make me feel different. And I don't think I could tell you something in this moment that's going to necessarily make you feel different in this moment. But what happens when you start just seeing, and forget the 3 principles, you don't have to believe in the 3 principles. You could just, when you allow your mind to just settle a little bit, you might just see a little tiny crack in maybe you are in a misunderstanding about life. Maybe, I mean, why is your way more true that you keep defaulting back to the bad start than the bad place than Shaul's way, which is he keeps defaulting back to the good place. Like, so right now, no matter what, maybe there's a little freaking bit of crack in that cement that everything's really bad and dark. Maybe there's just a crack.
And Marie, maybe be in touch with me. You know, I don't know if you know how to get in touch with me. I'd love to kind of follow up. You know, I don't know that this is the best way a longer conversation about this, but I'm happy to have a conversation with you about it.
Thank you.
Do you know how to get in touch with me?
No.
Okay, I'm going to put my email address on the chat thing down here. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Please do email me and let's have a long conversation about it.
Now, let me ask you also a question, Marie. When I heard you say thank you, it feels a little different than a few minutes ago. Do you feel a teensy bit different?
I suppose. I mean, yeah, I mean, I suppose I have so much to do. Not really. I'm not looking at my list. I go, nope, not really. But
see, our minds, it's just human minds trick us that it's more real, the bad stuff. And I think you got it. I think you got it. But when you go down, you don't want to admit that you've had good times. And I feel like that's the way I was for a lot of years. Like, I just couldn't, you know, I still go down and it still feels as real as it ever did. But something happens. There's just a little suspiciousness that I have now that when I go down, that maybe it's not true. And I do come back up. And I think you do too. I also know you, but I think you do more than you're willing to admit right now. Because when it's dark, it's like this trick. There's no way. It's like when you're in it, you can't see out of it. And that's the way it is. So what? You feel really crappy right now. So what? That doesn't mean the principles aren't the principles. That doesn't mean your mind doesn't play tricks on you.
yeah, I suppose all that reframing stuff people say, I just too tired to do it.
But the great thing about the principles, Marie, is that it's not a question of reframing. You're right. That's exhausting, you know. And when you're tired, the last thing you've got the energy for is to start trying to see things different or trying to reframe. There's just what we're suggesting, and what we see, and what I see in my life is there's just a natural writing mechanism in a human being that when you get lost in these things, if you kind of allow it to happen, or if you, as Wendy's saying, just let that little crack in, or just be a little suspicious, or just be open to seeing something a little different. The potential is there for it to write itself on its own. You don't need to do anything. You don't need to solve it. You don't need to change it. You don't need to make it happen. You just need to be open to it. And it might not happen in the time frame that you want. You know, we got our time frames. I want to feel better in the next 5 minutes. And if it doesn't work in the next 5 minutes, that's no good. Then these principles don't work for me. You know, I'm going to find something different that will make me feel better in the next 5 minutes. And there's kind of no promises and no guarantees, because it's not us doing it. It's something bigger at work. It's something greater at work. But when you, instead of fighting, you know, my understanding is that a human being is marginally lighter than water. And so in a calm pool, if a human being just lies and is calm, they'll float. But what happens is that people panic and they start kicking and screaming and jumping around. Now, if you jump around in a pool and you don't know how to swim, you're going to go down. You're going to sink. And the natural state is floating. The kicking around and fighting an uncomfortable experience of being in water when you can't swim is actually what makes the person drown. And I think that, you know, that if we kind of get okay with being uncomfortable, with being down, you know, George Pransky's got a great CD called "Doing Down Well," and I just love the title of it. You know, doing down well, being okay with being down, and the more we just, I won't say embrace, but almost embrace the fact that this is just part of the experience, I find. And I think as you learn more, I find that as people learn more, they all seem to find that there's a natural writing mechanism that just kind of comes together. I was saying to Wendi, there's a toy they used to have. No, they still have it. I looked it up recently. They have it in England. It's called Weebles. It's a kid's toy.
Yeah, we had it.
Yeah. So they have it. I saw they sell it on Amazon. And they're like these little men, and they've got ball bearings in the bottom, so they're weighted, and they rock back and forth, but you can never get it down. You can never get it on its back. You know, you push it down, it comes back again, bounces back, and you push it down, it bounces back again. And they used to have a catchphrase. I remember the advert, the commercial when I was a kid, of "Weebles wobble, but they don't fall down." And I think that's us human beings. We wobble, but we don't fall down. And the wobbles are frightening. And the wobbles can be really scary. And you can wobble a long way down. But you never fall down. You kind of only fall down if you think you do. And if you just kind of wait and be patient. I know it's hard to be patient when you're suffering like that. I get that. But if you can keep looking in this direction and be open to being suspicious about whether the way you're seeing the world is really the correct definition of what the world around you is, then I would be hopeful that you could, you know, that things can look brighter for you. And the good thing is, in my experience, again, just like when things look really bad, they don't look like they can ever be good again. When they look really good, they don't look like they can ever be bad again. You know, it's great. It's funny. We're all you know, we're all bipolar, every one of us. I don't know why they have a diagnosis of bipolar. They should just diagnose the human race as bipolar, because that's kind of all of us. You know, we just get so lost and so caught up and so feel so miserable and so down. And that's every one of us. And then there's times when we just feel great. And if we want to feel great all the time, you're gonna have a hard time with life. That's just the nature of the world we're in.
Thank you.
Yeah. Okay,
And
be in touch with me, Marie. Be in touch.
in addition to that, what started happening for me is I just stopped making so much meaning about my down. So at first it seems like it means I'm always going to feel that way, and I just go on and on about what it means. I mean, if you were down and you knew it didn't mean anything, because I look back on me when I was at the Pranskys for like 12 days one time. In the first 4 days, I was really upset about being down. I could have made the tape doing down really terribly. And I was upset that I was down. I was upset that I was a practitioner, that I was down. It meant that I could never be a practitioner. I mean, it meant that I was pathetic. If I was going to put one word on it, I just cried. I'd sit with Michael Neal, I cried. I sat with George Pransky, I cried. I sat with Barb, I cried. And I just felt like this human being, Wendi Saggese, was pathetic. And I really believed it. So I had like 3-4 days where I just cried. And then something happened where I stopped caring that I was that way. And then something happened where I heard somebody tell me a story about somebody else that committed suicide, and the family had no shame. And I saw something in myself, like my own insight. This is not an insight for anyone else, but I saw how much shame and how much meaning it meant if I didn't feel good. And I woke up to the fact that that wasn't any more real than the good feelings, or the bad feelings weren't so real. And all that stuff I made up wasn't really true. And I just kind of woke up out of this pathetic state. And then this gal came around because there was a seminar happening and I was part of that. And she was in that same state I was. And what I saw was, if I knew now, once I woke up out of that upset, I would have just hugged little Wendi, who was silly, really believing her upset. I would have just hugged me and said, you'll get it when you get it, and it doesn't mean as much as you think. And you're right where you're supposed to be. You're not supposed to be jumping around and skipping around. You're supposed to be where you are. And when you start seeing that, then the upset starts not meaning so much, and you move in and out like a little kid, like a 2-year-old that falls and cries, and then they get up and they fall and cry, and they get up and they jump, and then they have a tantrum. And it's just like, it's not like what I first thought. I thought, okay, I'm going to learn how to just be happy all the time. And that was a misunderstanding about the principles. Yes, we live in the feeling of thought, but that's it. We don't have to make anything about if we're in the feeling. We're always in some sort of misunderstanding about thought. It's just the human condition. It's not really just, I thought it was personal that I was upset. I thought it was about Wendi Saggese was somehow flawed. But I'm starting to see more and more and more. None of it's personal. It's just the way it is. Human beings get caught in thought and in upset. And as we see out of it a little bit, just a teeny crack, and then we see more and more and more. And it doesn't mean so much anymore that we're upset.
I don't feel that way.
That's okay.
I'm just upset. I have this much to do. It just feels, it doesn't. I do relate to the whole shame thing. I think it's because of partly, I know we don't get into past stuff here, but, being raised a certain way in certain circumstances that were very shameful and painful on physical, emotional, mental levels, and getting through that. And I think I did make up something as a kid. Someone talked about rules we make up in the comments, and I think I did make up a rule as a child that things would get better when I got older. And now that things haven't been better, as I'm now very old, I'm very upset with myself, I think.
Well, you'll get more and more insights about this. I really believe that, Marie.
Okay.
I think we'll see. You have some insights, and it's not my insights or Shaul's insights, but as you keep, things just pop when you calm down. Just be where you are now, for now. Like, who cares? You just don't see it. You just don't see it. And that doesn't mean you're never going to see it. It actually doesn't mean anything at all.
And I think it's great, Marie, that you're kind of seeing that, you're getting an inkling that at least some of what's upsetting you, you're making up. There's bits in there that you're making up, and perhaps as time goes on, you'll see more and more of it is what you're making up. There's bits that you see you are making up and bits that you don't think you are. And I think that, you just have to keep looking more, like Wendy's saying, just keep looking and keep looking and keep looking. And I find when I keep looking, I see more. Oh, I'm making that up as well. Oh, I didn't realize I made that up too. And before you know it, I'm making the whole thing up. Gosh. But I think kind of our time's up, Wendy. We're kind of done. Well, it's great, it's great to have so many people here that are really, really touched by that. And it's been great doing it with you, Wendy, as well. You didn't disappoint. I was looking forward to it. I had my expectations. Not a good idea to have those expectations, but they, even the expectations I made in my head, it definitely lived up to. So thank you. And as we said, we're open to do more of this because we feel like it's a topic that we kind of just touched on a little bit here. And, another couple of times we could certainly talk plenty more about these ideas and these issues. So we'll be back in touch with you, I think, and, see if people are interested. We'll do more.
Is somebody asking us something?
I just noticed that you're doing the recording. This is Amy talking.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
Hi.
Hi. And I just think it's such an important message, so valuable, and so wonderful, the stories that you told. So I don't know if you'll post it, but
we will. That's why we recorded it, and it's good that you reminded us, Amy. Thank you. Between us, we probably forget to do so, but we want to post this and put it up there, and then we want to kind of get feedback and perhaps do some more as a result. Thank you.
Yeah, Ann Curtis she does the 3 Principles resources. She's going to help us get it in a way that we could give it to people, and we'll probably put it up there. And if you guys want to send your emails or something, I don't really know, just to guarantee it, or if you email me, I know Shaul's really busy, so if you email me, hey, I haven't gotten the recording, please send it to me. I'll figure it out. Just remind me so that I get it to you if you hadn't gotten it.
Great. Okay, well, thank you, everybody, and thank you, Wendy. And
thank you, Shaul. That was great.
It's been a real pleasure. It's been a real pleasure. Okay, lots of love to you all.
Bye, guys.
Bye everybody.